Timing.
And we're going to hit that.
There you go. So while Randy's hitting all the buttons, folks are wondering where Teddy is. Teddy is out of the area today. So I am one of the typical attendees. I've been following Teddy and Randy for over a year now. My name is Dale Bondanza. I actually live down here in South Florida, sunny South Florida, just outside of Fort Lauderdale. So it's nice to traverse the Zoom meeting from the attendee side to the co-host side. I've been sitting in the audience when Sindy has also been the co-host, so I'm looking forward to speaking with Sindy today. As Randy kind of just mentioned a minute ago, today's topic is civility in an uncivilized world. So, Sindy, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background for those who aren't familiar with you?
Hang on just a second. We're right there right now, and just to show you that I can multitask. I know you legally or you scientifically can't, but I'm an exception to that. So just so you know. Hey, folks, welcome. Another episode of Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. And yeah, Dale Bondanza's filling in for Teddy, who had some other business to attend to. So he'll be back next week. In the meantime, Sindy Martin returns. Sindy, this might be your fourth or fifth time here over the last several years. So there's a reason for that. I'll tell you, Dale, Sindy is amazing. And we're going to learn some things about how to play well with others and how things that we say and do, perhaps subconsciously, impact our professionalism and how others perceive us. And so we're going to dive into that in a little bit more detail. But just so you know, I run our professional center for Goodwill here in Winston-Salem. We still believe it's the only standalone professional center in the world for Goodwill, oddly enough. Clients across the country. But if you'd like to get on the calendar, services are free, but you got to find me. Go to LinkedIn and we'll get you on the calendar. Happy to help. Happy holidays. Is that okay to say, Sindy? Happy holidays in general? We'll find out more about that. But Sindy Martin, Smart and International, I've known you for a long time, and I always tell that story of how we first met. And if we have time, I'll share that again. But always good to see you again, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Sindy, if you would tell us a little bit more about your background, and then we'll get into the topics today.
Well, my name is Sindy Martin, and I teach people how to walk, talk, and eat to improve their professionalism, their appearance, and their success in life. It makes a difference.
Yeah. Well,
my background is that I was actually born in Connecticut. My father was an officer in the Army, and we knew how to do all of these things and to eat with 19 pieces of silverware by the age of 3. So it's been ingrained in me for a very long time, how to introduce myself, shake hands, and be polite, be quiet when I need to, and listen when I need to. So now I teach it to others.
Very cool. Hey, by the way, if you have a comment or question for Sindy, put them in the chat area. Dale will keep an eye on that and work those in. And Dale also has some questions for you as well, Sindy. I know it was a good chat beforehand before we went live. And so excited to learn how to play well with others. But first, I always ask the why question. You kind of touched on that already, how you were raised with etiquette and so forth. Was there something that triggered that said, hey, I want to do that for a career? What's the why in terms of why you pursue this professionally?
I was actually in IT for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. And as I would go around, a lot of my careers involved traveling across the United States. So one of the last ones is where I went to colleges and universities all over the United States. And what I saw shocked me as I stood in line at Starbucks behind people dressed in pajamas. So I decided I was needed in that arena. And I started my own company 16 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, was it 16? I have to do the math. What does that come out to? 2007? I don't know. Whatever, something like that.
Just before that. Yeah, 2005, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that. So I'm going to tell the story anyway. So Sindy and I had never met Dale. Dale, this is maybe news to you. Sorry. So I don't know how somebody introduced us and say, hey, you guys ought to get together. So here I am, Mr. Uncouth. And so we got together for lunch one day, and I'm thinking, okay, pinkies extended, trying to not wipe my mouth, my sleeve, and all that stuff. So we get done, and I'm on my best behavior. It's like going to your aunt or your grandma's house, and it's sort of like, don't put your elbows on the table, all that stuff. So we get done, and I said, "Hey, Cindy, how did I do?" And I'll always remember you said, Randy, you were great except for one thing. Do you remember what that was?
I do.
All right, go ahead. What you got?
You should never have your utensil touching your plate and the table at the same time. So he literally had his knife touching the plate and touching the table.
Yeah. So that's it. I've remembered that. I don't always adhere to that, but every time I don't do it, I'm thinking, is Cindy looking over my Cindy? She's not around. I'm going to let it lean like that. So anyway, we're going to have some fun today, folks. If you have comments, questions, throw them in the chat. So let's talk this whole thing, just, I guess, conceptually about civility in general. And I think back, church is a good example. You got dressed up for church, especially Easter, and now
to fly on a plane. Remember when you used to have to wear a suit to get on a
or
plane?
go to a ball game. So the things are more, I'll call it casual. And do you see that ever changing? Do you see it continuing? You talked about pajamas. Or is that where this world's headed? Are we going to wear pajamas to work?
I think that we are at a point where things are so casual that I'm getting a lot of business because ever since COVID, people have gotten even more casual because they haven't been around other people. So I'm getting called in to help swing that pendulum back just a little bit. And I think that's what we'll see is we're never going to go back to the suits and dressing up to go to dinner and all that fun stuff, but we're going to come back a little bit more because with the temperament of the United States right now, it is essential that we add some civility back into the workplace, especially.
Got a subjective question then for you, and I believe this to be true. If we dress up, we act better.
Yes, we do.
You don't see people doing fill in the blank, we'll call it bad things, typically in a suit and tie, unless you're talking white collar crime. But I'm talking about talking about actual misbehaving and, violence and all kinds of things. It just seems like if we dress the part, if we're dressed professionally, we tend to act more professionally. Am I kind of okay on that, do you think?
I would agree with you. However, it depends on your occupation.
All right.
It really does, because when you're in IT and you're crawling around on the ground, getting the wires and everything else, you're not going to wear a nice dress shirt and dress slacks. You're going to dress for the part. So it does depend on the occupation. We know that people that are in marketing and creative things are going to dress more eclectically than in a lawyer's office.
And I get that. I guess what I'm talking about is more so in the general public as you walk around, that kind of a thing. And
no pajamas, no fuzzy slippers, which I see all the time.
Although you mentioned COVID, Cindy, which was kind of the segue that got us here, a la COVID, that still a significant portion of the US is either remote or hybrid. So on the days when folks are hybrid or remote, if they're remote full time, they're sitting behind a screen 8-10 hours a day. And while I have a shirt on, you would never know that I'm in my sweats or literally in my pajamas or boxers as I'm sitting here. But so that's why I also found what Randy just said interesting, because while people, and I agree, people do tend to act more professionally when they're dressed more professionally, I also find it humorous because as an IT guy, I also know that half the people that I'm looking at may or may not be wearing pants right now.
That's right.
Well, there's that. Hey, we're in the season now. I see the tree behind you, and this being the season, and Dale, chime in here too if you have comments on this thing too, because we all have opinions and we want to make sure that we get Cindy's take on this. Can I call it a Christmas tree? Should I have it in my background if I'm in a company meeting? Is it okay? What about buffet lines at the holiday social? Should I load my plate, stuff in my purse or my pockets and take it home? We're going to cover a lot of the seasonal stuff right now. So let's dive in first off and say holiday buffet lines. Any tips for that? Because I'm hungry.
Yes, that this is where
Okay.
Typically, okay, so if you're going to a networking event like you went to just the other evening,
Yeah.
when you go to a networking event, the first thing that you typically do is come in and have some type of drink. And we were talking about that earlier, just a limit of 2 alcoholic drinks if you're going to drink at all. But when you get your plate, there's a reason why they're small. And it's not so you can load them to up to the top. It's where you're just going to get a few things to bite on, because if you're at a networking event or even just a party, you're going to try to be conversing while you're eating. So you want to limit it to what you have on there. If I see someone with a big pile on their plate, it just doesn't make a good impression. It really doesn't. You just have a few pieces. You can go back again. You don't overload the plate. A lot of times you can come in and sit down with other people and eat before you go walking around and talking to people, because what happens is, and this actually happened to me at a networking event, here's this guy and he's picked up this chicken wing and he's eating his chicken wing and the barbecue sauce is all the way around his mouth and he's asking me questions while he's eating, and I found a way to excuse myself from the conversation. I mean, it was rude.
Yeah. So actually last night I went to a sit down event, and yeah, they had the cheese and the crackers and the little shrimpy things and all that stuff if you wanted an appetizer. But when it came time for the meal, I shall not name names, but let's just say, I didn't load my plate too much. I mean, I think it was okay. It was normal, but I saw some who had it, and the plate was like 8-9 inch. It was the dinner plate. And this thing's loaded to the max. And is that appropriate? I mean, it's
never appropriate.
No?
It is
Okay.
never appropriate. If you're that hungry, stop and eat a little something before you go.
Okay.
In most cases, if
Yeah.
you're trying to be healthy, it's better to go and eat an apple or eat something before you go so that you're not ravenous. Because when we're ravenous, we eat. So it's better to.
Well, if I can interject into that same conversation, Randy, you mentioned the plate and filling up your plate or not filling up your plate. I'm going to one of those it's a networking / holiday party tonight, and an appropriately named holiday party. I don't know the background of a lot of the folks that I'm with because it's a professional organization that I belong to. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah coming up very soon, Ramadan, Kwanzaa, Festivus for the rest of us. What do I say?
Yeah. How do we address that?
Most people will say, to be general, happy holidays. But I tend to say, isn't this the most wonderful season? And it's going to cover them all. It's not going to talk about holidays at all. This is such a wonderful season. I love this season. So that's pretty neutral, but we have to be careful, because if we say happy holidays to someone that we know is very religious, we may be insulting them, because Christmas is to celebrate the birth of Christ, which that's the Christian holiday. And it doesn't even touch Hanukkah, which is on Friday. And they don't celebrate Jesus. So you just got to be a little bit careful with the holiday thing. But
Sindy is one of two people that I anticipate getting a card from, Christmas card. 2, maybe 3. It's kind of gone by the wayside. I don't know. It is related to the happy holidays. Is it appropriate to email somebody? Should you call them? Should you send a card or send them a Facebook message? Or what level of acknowledgement for the holiday? Because for some people, Christmas and it's a very depressing time. They're lonely. How much do we need to read into all this, or can't just people take it at surface level and say, hey, this person cares, and not hold it against them?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right now, at this day and time, everything's acceptable. We get e-cards.
Yeah.
Are certainly much more affordable. E-cards. We get text messages, especially on the day of, like with Thanksgiving. My phone will blow up with happy Thanksgiving. But for me personally, and maybe because I teach etiquette, but if somebody has gone to the trouble to buy a card, write in the card, put a stamp on that card, and mail that card, that is such a sincere thing to do, to show your friendship, to show that you care about them. It's just, it means so much to people. When I get a card in the mail, it's like, woohoo, I got it.
Write that down, Randy. You better send Cindy a card.
Yeah, better. Yeah.
Like-
I remember my mom, this was back in the Stone Age, right? So, but my mom used to, on index cards, she had a card box with everybody's name on it who had ever sent a card. And she would put a little X beside, did we get one? And did we send one? And and it was like keeping score. And if somebody didn't send one for a couple, 3 years after we did, they kind of fell off, or they went to the back of the card box. And I'm only half joking. She used to do that. And
Yeah.
I saw that and I thought,
I've seen that.
why do we do that? I mean, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it because I care about you, not because you're going to reciprocate.
Yes. That is
But
correct.
anyway, that's a side.
I do not expect anyone to send me a card back. I'm doing it because I care about people.
Yeah, Dale. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and similarly, Randy, and Todd mentioned a good point too. Is it's funny you talked about the holiday cards, and Todd mentioned the annual holiday or Christmas letter, and I laughed when I saw him put that in the chat, because I remember those Christmas letters that I used to get from many of my brothers that haven't gotten them in over a decade, I think, but now you're lucky to get a picture. And similarly, we just send out a picture of us and the fur baby at this point.
Yeah.
But that's where the reason why is because we stay connected on Facebook, on X now, not Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We get to see so much more about what's going on with us. And we'll even send those links to the family saying, look at this. And so that keeps us a little bit closer. And like I said, it is acceptable. But if you want to stand out, then you send a card. If you're in an interview, there's two things that you should have ready. Number one, you know their email address, right? And you're going to send them a thank you email the minute that you get home or get out of there. And number two, you're going to literally mail the thank you note that day, and they're going to receive it tomorrow. And people go, well, if I've already sent them an email, why should I have to send them a thank you note? Because here's what's going to happen. The minute you send a card, they're going to pull out your file and or attach it to your resume. And it's going to put your resume back on top.
Yeah, front of mind, if nothing else, say, hey, this person went the extra mile.
I've been hired. I have been hired before for my thank you notes.
Yeah, and Dale, you're a hiring official. What do you think about that?
Well, it's funny you say that, because good transition. That's
why they pay me the big bucks. I just Dale.
Exactly. You've done this before. I can tell, Randy. You're very good at this.
There you go.
Despite what Teddy said about when he called, but no, Cindy, a good point there, because so many interviews today, again, IT, are conducted online over the web. I also apologize. I was negligent to use my Teddy line. At one point, we had over 13,000 people on the call today. So thank you to all the folks that are in attendance. But when I was talking about interviews, it's funny, we were talking about interviews earlier, and there were a couple questions I wanted to ask you on interviews. As someone who has gotten to a level in my career where I've had the chief in front of my title, and then at similar times when I'm interviewing for things like chief information officer or those types of roles, and because we're over Zoom, because we're in the post-COVID era, I'm curious how important it still is that if I'm at an interview, whether I'm a C-level or a entry-level, person out of college, suit and tie, dress, what's the appropriate configuration? And then I kind of want to follow up on that with kind of a recent study that I read as well.
Okay. I'm going to answer your question with a story. So I was applying for a high position in IT many moons ago, and it was on a Friday, and I was told we have casual Friday here, so feel free to wear jeans, whatever. This is an interview. This is my first opportunity for these people to meet me and see me. I dressed up. I dressed up in a suit. I went to the interview and I go, didn't they tell you it was casual Friday? I said, this is an interview and this is my first impression with you guys. So I'm wearing the suit. And if it's a gentleman, they could say, well, at least take your tie off. Okay, take your tie off, take your jacket off. That's fine. But what they remember is that you respected them enough that you came dressed up. How do you feel? We've all interviewed people that came in not dressed appropriately at all. And sometimes we can't even get past the fact that you didn't respect us enough to at least put on a clean pressed shirt. Come on.
It's fun. That was a great story, Cindy, because you triggered a memory that I remember interviewing a young lady at one point early on in my career when I was just like a first line manager. And I think I was interviewing her for a developer position. And I was young, so I was asking some of the typical HR questions, you know, tell me something good about yourself. Tell me something you'd like to improve about yourself. And she said, she goes, well, let me think, what to improve. She goes, you know, I kind of have a mouth like a sailor. One of the first times I was ever speechless in an interview. Thankfully she didn't, but how do you handle that type of situation, Cindy? Or if someone is cursing in an interview on either side of the table, whether it's the interviewer or the interviewee? I'm curious as to your perspective on that.
First of all, when I speak to other people and they're constantly using profanity back at me, I'll tell a story. I'll tell a story. And then the point gets made. Like, for example, with my son, when my son was 21, he moved up to New York. And even back then, the F word was used as a verb. Okay, so when my son would call home, I'd go, "Hun, you're talking to your mom." That's all I had to say. And all of a sudden, the F word got moved out of there. So by telling that story, I'm saying I don't care for profanity.
Okay.
Without having to do that.
Well, similarly, and I think it was Milan here who just asked a great question. Starting a new job soon, contractor, software developer, Silicon Valley. So just kind of painting the picture of, you know, we know that it's probably a relaxed company, but similar, I'm going to guess based on what you just said, he's asking, you know, what to wear on the first day. Okay. I'm assuming it's the same thing. It may not be a suit, but it's at least, in my opinion, shirt and tie, maybe a sport jacket. And then if they tell you, hey, relax, take off the tie, take off the jacket, cool. But that's not how I'm going to start. Correct?
My son now lives in San Francisco. And so when he goes, you're right. He's got on a shirt just like what you have on there. And he may have on jeans, but boy, and he may even wear a jacket with the shirt and the jeans. He's not going to wear a tie, but he looks professional. And that's what's important, not to go in just a t-shirt and jeans, but to step it up. And it's amazing how any type of suit jacket with jeans, I mean, think of Ralph Lauren even, you know, how he dresses up a pair of jeans. And that's the way he goes into board meetings. So as long as even in the world of Zoom, the top half looks business, then that's what's going to stick in their minds. And here's something else I'd like to mention at this point.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So there was a survey that Yale did, and they went to all these different networking groups. They had the same group of people and they went to the networking groups, but they wore different colors, and they would take note of how many people approached them. What do you think was the number one color that attracted the most people? Yeah.
I'll guess first, and I'll let Randy go. Red?
No.
Randy?
Yellow. Yellow.
Green.
Green.
Green. Grass and trees and money, and it was green.
Health.
What was
Health.
number 2?
Blue.
Yellow.
Ah, see, I'm interested in yellow.
You were
Sunshine.
close. You were close, Randy. You were close.
A third one was blue,
There you go.
but all those 3 were at the top. What do you think was at the absolute bottom?
Black. Brown.
Now I'm going to reverse my answer, and now I'm going to say red again.
That is correct. Red.
Okay.
And it was why? What was it? You know, they asked some questions later on, especially the ones that didn't get approached at all. And it was, red reminds me, and here it is, Christmas. Red reminds me of death. It reminds me of arrogance. I can't stand red ties. So
now I really got to ask. That was a U.S. survey?
yes, that was a U.S. survey. Yes, it was.
I'd be curious because I know you have this experience.
Yeah.
Do you believe that that is true even when we're among our international colleagues?
I wouldn't say so, because the second lowest color was gray in America. They felt that it was like wallflower type thing.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
overseas, the gray suit tops our navy blue suit here in America.
Hey, we've got a
Interesting.
lot of turf to cover today, and we're going to take a break here at 1:30 and just to give you a chance to breathe for a moment. I wanted to circle back because we've got a lot of things to cover, but we started off talking about holiday events and so forth. Something you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about was appropriate hostess gifts.
Yes. Yeah.
Help us understand what all that entails.
In this world of ours, where there's a brewery on every corner, it does not mean that everybody drinks. So you may think it's appropriate to bring a bottle of wine or something of that nature to a hostess. You may be insulting that hostess unless you know that they drink. Okay, so you got to be careful. Here's the other thing. Some people are allergic to flowers. And so in America, when we think of hostess gifts, we think of wine and flowers. Well, guess what? You may have that hostess going, oh, thank you so much. And they put it out in the garage instead of putting it out on the table. We have to be a little bit more familiar. So what's safer is, especially if it's the holiday season, is an artificial arrangement. And you can get those all over the place. That's even for artificial flower arrangement or a Christmas arrangement. If it's a host, then you can get something more appropriate that way. Also, what's the latest book that just came out? Maybe they would like to have the top nonfiction book that came out. Something more practical, but never bring food that you've cooked if you're being hosted by someone else. Because if your food is better than theirs, you've insulted them again.
Wow, didn't even know it.
Yeah.
So if I bring a bag of chips, am I out of line? I mean, that's my speed.
Only if you've been asked to bring them.
Okay.
And that's why we ask.
And they're unopened, Randy.
Yeah, unopened. All right, so let's piggyback on that for a moment.
Good
The old
point.
the old RSVP thing. We want to know how many people are coming. And in these days, nobody responds to RSVP. So why is that? And how do you as a host or a hostess navigate through that?
You tell their mother. No. What it is so important to let people know that you're coming because of the planning that goes into it. And I'll tell you what, on your budget these days with food, holy cow, you're going to spend a lot of money on food right now.
Yeah.
To hold a party. So at least have the decency. And that's the biggest word here, okay? Civility and decency to respond. I think there's something else going on that date. Let me check and I'll get back to you. At least you've responded. I mean, we do that in our emails, right? Somebody in business sends us a thing and it's, could you do such and such? You send a note back. Hey, I'm in a meeting right now. Let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
but don't wait till the day before.
Ooh.
And don't tell them the day before that you're bringing somebody with you.
Okay. I mean, some of this could be, hey, I'm holding out for something better, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. That's why some people do it.
But
And
Bondanza was the best we could get on short notice. I'm just telling you. You know, if we had
it's
more time, we
those
could have upped our game a little, but you know, that's where we
so
are.
many places I could go with that, Randy, but I'm just
I
going to
know.
be civil and keep my
That's what-
mouth shut.
But I
There
will
you-
say this.
Touche.
Absolute
Yeah.
minimum. Okay. We know nowadays we've got to send things out a little bit ahead so people can schedule it in, especially this
Yeah.
month. Okay. Because so much goes on in the month of December, but a minimum of 2 weeks in advance, because that's
Week.
when we're doing our buying and getting ready and everything else. Now, in our generation right now, things happen so fast and people expect things so fast that they think they can respond at the last minute because it's okay. It's not okay.
Yeah. Hey, we're halfway through our show today, folks. Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy rolls on. I think this is show number 191 or 192. So we've been at this a while and continue to plow on. Today's guest, by the way, is Sindy Martin of Smartin International. Cindy's been our guest several times in the past. We've learned a lot about etiquette, professionalism, and today is no exception. And if you were looking for Teddy Burriss, he'll be back next week. Dale Bondanza joins us. Dale's, you and I interacted probably 6 months ago, and you're friends with Teddy as well. And Dale, you have your own entity, don't you? Your own consultancy. What's that
I
about?
do.
Yeah.
I have my company is DAB Enterprises LLC. I'm an independent information technology consultant. I help small and medium-sized businesses make technology less scary. So I often go in and help explain very geeky technical terms to very non-technical people and hopefully make their technology less scary for them for a fraction of the cost of what it would normally cost them. So
cool.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for allowing me to sit in the big shoes that of Teddy and with 12,000 people on the line, I'm humbled to be a part of the podcast.
Yeah, it's become almost like a family. We see a lot of the same folks each week, so it's really and Sindy, you've been in the audience as well. So again, feel like old friend week here. We've got three folks together. All right, so if you have comments or questions for Sindy, put them in the chat. Dale will keep an eye on that. We've got almost half an hour left, so if you have thoughts and questions, put them in there. All right.
Well, Sindy, you were talking.
Yeah,
go ahead, Randy. I'm sorry.
No, fine. Either.
And then Sindy was going to throw something up, so I'll let the guest go first.
There you go.
You reminded me of something, Dale. Back when I was in IT, the worst thing ever about holiday parties, people came up to me about their computer problems. That is the one thing I don't want to talk about. I do it all day long, and it's not what I want to do. I mean, it's an occupational hazard, just like doctors or dentists.
I was just going to say the doctor is the other example.
Oh, here's the rule: when we're out networking, when we're out at a party, don't talk shop. Okay, ask about the person. They have another life other than what they do.
Yep.
Hey, Sindy, didn't you have was it home, or what was the analogy that you, or the acronym that you used in conversation to initiate? And then Dale, I'm sorry, I jumped in there, but you talked about stay away from shop talk, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what you want to do is have proper form, FORM. Family. Okay. The first one, F is for family, but not talking about your Uncle Charlie that's in prison, but what brought you to this area, how you went to college and you decided to stay. I mean, that kind of family type thing.
Yeah.
The O is for organizations. What organizations do you belong to? Dale, you just mentioned one of the organizations that you belong to. And it's, tell me more about that. Right? The R is for recreation. How about those Chiefs last night? Oh my God. So you can say, so what do you do for fun? Do you ski? Do you, are you into sports? Maybe they like bowling and you're going to have to listen to that conversation, but you're asking about something that they do for fun.
Yeah.
For fun. Maybe they're a reader. That can start have you read anything great lately? You know, you've heard that one before, but oh my gosh, there's so many books out now that are just absolutely amazing for those of us that are avid readers. And then the M stands for motivation. So Dale, what motivated you to get into IT? So
There you
it's
go.
what motivated you to get out of bed this morning. What do you
Yeah, I
Well,
actually put that comment out there in the chat for everybody because I think that's an awesome acronym.
So family, organization, recreation, motivation. And if you can remember that proper form, then you won't feel as uncomfortable because everybody feels that way. Oh my gosh, how many times have we been in a room, we don't know anyone there, and someone comes up and says, "Hi, I'm so and so. Oh, how are you doing? So are you from around here?" You know, start with the F.
And not the F bomb, but the
Tell
F
me about some of the organizations
family.
in this city.
Yeah.
Okay.
So many
I got
things.
you.
You,
Yeah,
you
Dale,
know,
you
you,
went to,
yeah, you mentioned Cindy had there's kind of almost two topics that Cindy mentioned that I kind of wanted to bring together because the holiday party is interesting and it because I know where I'm going tonight and I know the group of people that I'm dealing with tonight. And this isn't really an issue for that group, but you were also talking earlier about, you know, interviews or people being on new jobs or people being in careers, you know, as we're in the post-COVID era. I have found, and I'll say this, you know, I'm not ashamed of my age as an ex-gen individual in IT and technology, in dealing with a industry that is consumed by an exuberant amount of Gen Y, millennials, and Gen Z, Zoomers, and up and coming alphas. We are in a different world these days than when I grew up in when it comes to things like tattoos and piercings. And I would be curious as to your civility lesson when it comes to things like an interview, A, on Zoom, but you know, B, in general, just whether it's in person or over a internet connection. Piercings, hand tattoos, facial tattoos, nose piercings, etc.
Well, when I am asked, if I am directly asked, what should I do for my interview? One of my first things is take out your piercings, use the cover up. There's so much cover up out there. And they say, but this is who I am. This is part of me. And my question is, so how old is the person you're interviewing with? It's a different generation. And you want to appear your best. Now, we all know, right? 55% of how people judge you is by your appearance, right? The first thing they see, your appearance and your body language. And your body language. So then we know that 38% is your tone of voice. So if someone even mentions tattoo and you show some kind of attitude about it, that interview's done. And 7% are the actual words that we say. So the total focus is on your appearance and your body language. So if it's all about the appearance, you want to look your absolute best. And we tell people, if you're at an interview, you're not going to wear really big earrings or really big necklaces or bracelets or anything else. Tattoos and piercings fall into the same group. And the reason why we say that is we want that person to focus on our face and what we're saying. Okay. Remember, our words are only 7%. So they're listening to the tone of our voice and our appearance. You're going to
and you said 38% was tone?
38%, the tone of your voice.
So can you give me so that's fascinating. Can you give me an example of what a appropriate, inappropriate, and then maybe Metza tone would be?
So someone asks me about my tattoos. I see that you have a prominent tattoo right there on your shoulder. Is that something that you feel that you could cover up while you're doing the Zoom customer service? Yes, I have no problem with that, right? That would be appropriate. It would be, really? My tattoo? Really? And then
Okay.
is it important? Okay. Is it important for the job?
Okay.
Right?
That is actually great. Those are three
If
perfect
someone
examples.
says to me, you
Yeah.
know, do you have any children? And I say, do I need to have them to get the job?
What's it to you?
No, you can't say it. That's the attitude. See, that's the tone
You're
of
so
voice.
fired, Randy. You're so fired.
Hey, a lot of this comes down to distraction. And I used to be a headhunter, and
Absolutely.
on Friday afternoon, when none of the big shots like Hale were working after 2 o'clock on a Friday, we'd sit around and tell war stories about stupid interview scenarios and all kinds of crazy stuff. And we had stories about people with these big belt buckles and the light shining off the belt buckle or the watch and shining in the person's face, and all they could think of was being blinded by this guy. No matter, or a lot of cologne or tats or
Oh,
piercings or
that's
anything.
that's
Okay.
a that's
There
a
you go.
classic. The vapor trail.
Well,
Oh.
or So leave it at yeah.
Yeah.
I guess is
No
the main thing.
musk-scented cologne.
So
Showering
distraction.
is important.
I should
Oh,
try it.
yeah.
I used to have a professor in college. He said soap and paper are cheap. Use lots of both. That's anyway.
Nice.
That's what I remember from 4 years of college. But so if I'm hearing you right, then, and I agree with you, Cindy, on this thing. I need to know my audience. So if I'm interviewing in a highly creative arena, and especially if I'm not customer facing,
Right.
then it's probably going to be more acceptable. But not knowing that, we want to err on the side of conservatism. And I might even ask, because they can see a hole in my ear, or
Yeah.
they could see, and I might ask, so what's your policy on that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at least it shows that I took the first step to tone it down and then ask for what's the leeway here, versus here I am, love me or leave me kind of thing. And they may say, well, it's a customer facing job. And I may have blown the interview right off the bat. Maybe. Why take that risk if you don't have to? I guess that's another way to look at it. Thoughts? Either of you guys?
Well, the thing is that what I hear,
Yeah.
especially because I teach in the colleges a lot,
Yeah.
and what I hear is this is an expression of who I am. And I say, just like you just said, Randy, tone it down for the interview, pay attention to what everybody else is doing, and you're good. But if you want to work there and you want that salary, you got to conform. You just have to.
And I think another thing that you do very brilliantly, Cindy, and I've picked it up throughout even this conversation, and I try to be cognizant of it because I do a fair amount of podcasts myself, especially on this, again, in the Zoom world that we live in, whether it's Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, etc., Skype. Most of the time, you're only visible from the chest up. So what you do very well, I've noticed, is hand gestures. Are there hand gestures, subtle, good or bad, things that we shouldn't do? Again, I've noticed you're obviously a maestro at them, but for the Gen Pop out here, what are things that are common mistakes that we might make on a call?
One of the things that I would mention is record yourself. Record yourself doing an interview. Like have somebody in your family or whatever record you while you're doing it, and notice, are you touching your hair? Are you touching the jewelry? Are you adjusting your clothes? Those are all signs of nervousness. So we need to be aware of that. The other is keep your fingers more together than apart. Talk about distracting. And keep those fingers, your hands, if you're explaining something, keep your hands open and up. This is positive. This is negative. Oh, I don't mind driving. You're saying, I don't want to, but I will.
Mm-hmm.
So our body language is emphasizing those things. The other is, what is the nationality of the person that you're talking to? We have to be aware, especially in America. We all do the okay sign. Well, that isn't what it means in other countries, and with the deaf either. It's a very bad thing. In Europe, when you do this, that's a bad thing. In America, it's peace, right? But turning it around is not a good thing. You are actually insulting somebody else. We have to be so careful with the
Right on, Cindy. The old thumbs up is the other one.
That's right, because thumbs up means up yours. Okay, so that's not what you want to do. You want to use your hand in a positive or I don't agree.
What about eye contact itself? If I stare at you too much, that's unnerving. And in other cultures, does that also have other implications? If
Yes.
by looking at help us understand that, because we're in a multicultural background here now.
There are several countries where they have been taught from a very, very
Mhm.
young age that you do not stare somebody in the face because it's a form of disrespect. So you may find that as you're talking to them, they're looking somewhere else and you keep trying to get their attention and they're not going to. So when you encounter something like that, your job is to look away. Just you're going to glance at them, say something, and look away to answer the question. That gives them the opportunity to look at you. I have a friend that was born in Bombay, and she is like that. She's always been like that. And I had to learn to do that. And she had to tell me, I said, why won't you look at me? And she said, because I was taught not to. It's a form of disrespect in my country. And the other thing is that if you know that you're going to be meeting with someone of a different nationality, take a look at the book. You can get it in the library, Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands. It'll tell you the very specific, and it's very brief, it'll tell you about the main things about that country. And if you get a chance, read the one on America, because it's quite eye-opening.
Any highlights?
and not in a good way.
Spoilers? Yeah, figures.
Yeah.
Yes. Be aware that Americans will talk on their phone while they're talking to you. Absolute disrespect. I mean, it is disrespectful in America too. Because if I'm sitting here and all of a sudden I'm talking with you and my phone rings, I'm like, oh, go ahead. Do you know what I do when somebody does that? I stop talking. Oh, go ahead. No. I'll talk to you when you're finished. But they say that in that book, to be aware that we will have our computers in front of us, our phones in front of us, and be holding conversations with both. So disrespectful. People will come, and you know how you have these wonderful things and you've got them in your ears and you're talking to someone. I'll ask you, would you mind removing that? First of all, it's a distraction, but number two, and I see you hit that button and start talking. Hello, how disrespectful to me.
Hey, here's one for you. And again, the person shall remain nameless, but it's someone that you know quite well, I believe. And so anyway, so this fellow, I would go to a lot of different chamber events and all kinds of social events, whatever. And this guy was one of those guys that he wanted to see who's in the room. So I would shake his hand, and as our hands were engaged with each other, and perhaps you can show us how to shake hands. I know there's nobody to shake with there, but he wouldn't look at me. He would be looking like, hi, Randy, and looking past me as though I didn't exist, because he was looking for the next person. And that's been some time ago. I still remember that. When I think and when I see this person online or I see them at an event, that's the same thing I think of all the time. This guy just kind of looked right through me like I was just a piece of glass or something. So any tips for eye contact and the handshake, the whole process when you engage with someone? What should you do? What about a business card too? If people still carry those, how should we handle those things?
Actually, we should have both. On the business card part, you should have a physical business card and an electronic business card so that you can, when you meet up with them, you can automatically send it to them. Some people, if you hand them the paper card, they'll simply snap it in the app and record yours. But if you both have iPhones, you can just air send it right over to you. But you should have both. And I teach that to the college kids as well, that you should have both of those. Now, when we shake someone's hand, and I'll try to show you my way. First of all, a good handshake is when you touch your hand to the skin of their hand. So you go all the way in. That's going to give you a solid handshake, not the grabbing the fingers and being a fish and everything else. That does not show it. Plus, we don't crunch somebody's hand. We don't need to show you that hurts. And I'll actually say that hurts. No, if you go in and you meet their hand that way, you wrap your fingers around, shake a couple of times, and you're good. The key to a good handshake is being all the way in. If you don't get their hand well enough, I'll actually grab someone's hand and pull it in to mine and have a good handshake.
That matter in terms of the strength of handshake, whether I'm shaking with a female or a male?
Absolutely not. We are equal. And a woman, it used to be a woman couldn't extend their hand to shake hands. We absolutely can do that now as well. Very important. But one of the things I want to say is people, they want somebody to be around. They don't want to stand by themselves. And they're taking the opportunity to look around.
Sure.
Quit talking. Quit talking. And while we're talking about shaking hands, there's a reason why we wear our name tag on our right hand side. I know you guys have a pocket on your left, but the name tag goes on your right. And the purpose of the right is because it's the straight line up from your hand, because we always shake with our right hand. So you want to do that. Now, here's the key. You're talking with somebody and all of a sudden you notice that they look around at their feet. Look at their feet. When we're interested in someone, typically our feet are going to be straight ahead. If you notice that one of their feet all of a sudden goes off to the side, they're ready to leave. It is the body language for, I'm done talking with you and I'm trying to find a polite way to leave. The next thing that'll happen is their torso will turn slightly. Again, I'm ready to leave. And usually the third thing is they start looking. If they start looking around, Randy, look at their feet. If his foot's out, he's done. So
love that. That's perfect for tonight. As a matter of fact, going to my holiday party. I'm so going to use that tonight.
And you say, hey, I have a mission tonight to meet 5 new people. So it's been nice talking to you and I'm going to go.
Love that. Love that. Can I follow up on one of the questions that we had in chat, Randy?
Absolutely.
Don asked a good question, and I think I have part of the answer for him, but I'd love Cindy to kind of fill it in. Is Don asked, or Donald, I apologize if you go by Donald, how can you effectively research the person you're interviewing with? And I asked him if he meant professionally or personally. In my world, again, it's very easy as an IT guy. My knee jerk is just de facto to look everybody up on LinkedIn. And then I go directly from LinkedIn to the top 4 or 5 social media boards, because your HR people are going to do it as well. So if I'm looking up Cindy Martin, I go right to LinkedIn, then I'll go to Facebook, then I'll go to Insta, then I'll go to, maybe X if I can do the search. But Donald was asking, what's the basis for a unique perspective or questions that could lead to good questions. And the more you know about that person, and I say LinkedIn because a lot of us put out our alma maters, our interests, basically form that you mentioned earlier, family origins, all that kind of stuff. Any one little piece that you can identify with another individual to make you somewhat interesting to them is helpful.
We have to be careful with our searches because we don't want to sound like a stalker. you don't want to sound like, well, I was looking you up online and I noticed that, you have to bring it up
Mhm.
a little bit more subtly.
Casually.
that you
Okay.
yes, so that you don't sound like a stalker. But another thing, besides just going to those social media things, go into Google and just put their name in Google and watch other things that pop up. Maybe it's a news article. I love to be able to say, hey, I noticed that you were part of Habitat for Humanity and that your company got an award for the work that you've put in at Habitat for Humanity. First of all, I'm talking about something that's really great for the community.
Mhm.
I'm praising that person for being involved and volunteering. I mean, I'm talking about something positive. So I love to find the extracurricular stuff, and that's on
Yeah.
LinkedIn too, if people have put it in there. But I have found that by just putting in their name or the company's name, it tells me more things that have come up in newspapers and things like that. And we all love to feel appreciated. We're born
Mhm.
wanting to feel appreciated. And that's where I've even had interviews where I went in and said, well, I saw where you guys won such and such award. And they go, we did? Is that on our
Yeah.
website? I said, yeah.
Yeah.
They stop what they're doing and they got to look it up.
Hey, we've only got a couple 3 minutes left, so hopefully that addressed Donald's question. I do want you to offer up a couple of takeaways here, real quick. But first, one other we didn't cover yet. I want to do it, and I think I know your answer. Filler words and how they destroy your credibility. What are examples of filler words, and how do we solve that or work through that to eliminate or reduce those?
Right. This is the biggest mistake that I see especially in our younger
Mhm.
generations, but older too. You can go out there on YouTube and watch any senator speaking about anything and you'll hear it. And it's the filler words. We feel that instead of just being quiet for a second and putting our thought together, we say, like, so, okay. Those are filler words. So what happens is if I'm talking along, like when Dale asked me a question, I go,
Yep.
well, I think that it's kind of like, well, stuff like that. Doesn't sound like I know what I'm talking about, does it? And that's why we really need to remove the filler words so that we could sound like the subject matter expert. And the way to do that, again, record yourself, okay? And then take a pair of keys, or if you have a bell, and ring it or shake those keys every time you hear yourself say, like, so, any kind of filler word like that, because you will eliminate. You do that a couple of times, you're going to start catching yourself as you're talking. If you become aware of when you're doing it, then you'll be able to eliminate it.
Right. One last takeaway. What you got?
Me?
Yeah. Something you want us to remember, if nothing else.
Oh my gosh. Stand up straight. Keep your feet forward when our feet are out.
Mhm.
Sway our back, and that's why our backs can hurt at the end of the day. Walk with your feet forward instead of out like a duck, and it's going to make you feel better. It's also going to give you a better poise and position when you walk into a room.
Sindy, if somebody wants to follow up with you, get more information, or maybe book a session with you, how can they do that?
Smartenup.com is my website, and Sindy at smartenup.com, and it's smarten-up.com.
SMARTIN-UP.com. There you go. Thank you. Sindy Martin has joined us. Dale Bondanza, a quick plug for what you do. Thanks for coming, by the way.
I'll throw up the funny one from the beginning before you and I started recording, that if folks really want to hook up with me, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me on my YouTube channel where I do my podcast. Both of my websites are there as well. Always happy to engage with folks. But thank you very much for allowing me to sit in the big shoes of Teddy today. I appreciate it.
There you go. Hey, and I don't have any great words of wisdom other than pay attention to what Sindy tells you, and you'll do fine. It's so much in life is subjective. And we make decisions based on subjectivity. We validate them based on logic. But if I don't like you, or you create a negative impression, however that's created, however I perceive it, that's hard to shake, especially if it's your first engagement with somebody. So our next guest coming up will be Jason Thiel on December 13th. He is president of Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. There's a lot of stuff shaking here in Winston-Salem over the holidays and throughout the year. So he'll be in to share some of the upcoming events and such. So we hope you'll join us. That'll be on Wednesday, the 13th, 11:55. And hopefully Teddy Burriss makes a return visit to our show so he can engineer this thing and I can just sit back and monitor the chat box. So folks, thanks attendees for joining us today. We appreciate that. And we had really great engagement. So wonderful show. Thanks again, Cindy. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you so much.
And thanks
Thank
for
you
watching,
guys
folks.
as well.
Yep. Have a
Good
good
seeing you
day.
again.
See you now.
Yep. Take care all.